Hey guys, welcome back. BGCKR here. We're back with our weekly recap of all things Injustice. This is for the week of November 14th, 2024. The current character challenge is Kahndaq Black Adam. That is a 1 week repeat. The required characters for that are Sinestro, Green Arrow, and Catwoman, who you can all get as low as bronze tier. His passive is the Thunder King, which is Black Adam's basic combo and special attacks apply electric damage over time, and if not blocked, drains opponent's power. He's got 1,100 attack, 1,200 health. It was last available on the 2nd of November, 2023.
All right.
So, just about a year ago.
Yeah. So he's got decent stats. They're not top stats, but, it's direct contrast to last week's challenge character, which was Killer Frost. They both have the same health, but he's got 1,100 attack instead of her 800.
Mm-hmm.
We are partial to Black Adam's. In general, because all of his skins are fast with the basic damage attacks. But more importantly, Regime Black Adam was the first gold card in our first account. And that was probably because he was the most common gold card to get in the gold pack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I used to think that this Black Adam, Kahndaq Black Adams, it sounded really nice but didn't do enough. And I think I've changed my mind a bit about it after playing with him a lot more. And despite what the passive says, the damage over time only applies after combo ender, not just a basic combo.
Mm-hmm.
The damage over time is really a tiny amount. It doesn't seem to have an impact on any of the fights. And thankfully, that actually works both ways. So even though you don't get much benefit from it, you also don't get hurt by it against, say, a Blackest Night Flash team. Because when the Flash team gets healing and power generation from the damage over time, it's not very much, right? You contrast that against Arkham Knight Catwoman, where if you're fighting the Blackest Night team with her, you really see them like voomp. Lots of health, lots of power. So, however, the power drain is actually pretty good. And you can see a bit from that footage that when we do the tag in sometimes against a character with some power, we can get them down from a full bar to less than what they'd need to do a special, and say Arkham Origins Batman to less than 2 bars. So his special 2 is what we're sort of focusing on here, which we generally do on the weeks when we're reviewing character. And it's got multiple hits. The biggest damage is his last hit. And in theory, he can hit multiple opponents with his special 2, unlike some of the newest high-stat challenge characters that can only knock out an opponent with the last hit of a special.
Mm-hmm.
But for practical purposes, most of the time, the few exceptions you're going to see on the screen, I think, in some of this footage, at most you're only going to knock out one person because there isn't enough spacing between the hits. And we talk about that spacing a lot. And it's probably worth every once in a while revisiting and saying what that means to us is we're talking about the time between separate hits on a multi-hit special.
Mm-hmm.
And the best specials are those that have enough time between hits so that if one hit knocks out an opponent, there's enough time before the next hit so that it can damage the opponent who's tagging in. The time after knock... Oh, so this is something funny about Black Adam and when we talk about his speed. The time between knocking out one opponent and then the next opponent tagging in means the hit after the knockout will hit empty air, unless it's a character with a unique special 2 that has a pause in the middle of a special. And sometimes, you waste a bunch of hits because you're just smacking empty air.
Mm-hmm.
This Black Adam special 2, I think, has 3 hits. To me, the ratio feels like it's 15%, 35%, and then 50%, like half of the damage is on the last hit. So if the first hit, which is only 15% of the total damage, knocks out the opponent, but clearly you have to have a really weak opponent or you've already softened them up a bit.
Yeah, it's unlikely.
Right. If that knocks out the opponent, the 35% second hit will whiff, and the 50% one might hit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really sure how the timing works, but sometimes the third hit doesn't connect, and there's probably something else at play, some other factor. Maybe it's the animation for the opponent tagging in. Maybe it's a passive or gear effect, but it works against opponents with a revive, so it's not a total loss, right? Tagging in takes up more time than a revive does. An interesting thing is that even though the listed max damage for Special 2 is more than double his Special 1 in practice, it still feels like his Special 1 does more damage. But the real cool thing is that the damage over time, which is not very much at all, doesn't affect the amount of damage that his Special 2 does, probably because it's part of his passive. Initially, I started using Quake Engine on him, trying to increase the amount of damage over time you get from his specials, but the unexpected and unfortunate effect has been to boost the special damage enough that we're knocking everybody out on the last hit, and not triggering any damage over time. It's not awful, but not what was expected. So that's why we've shifted, and he's got the Claw of Horse, because that's really a useful loadout. Because if your Tantu Totem person has Claw of Horse and they have Master's Death card, then the second tag and you can strip all the gears off somebody. I think his biggest problem is that he doesn't have any special synergy with any other characters, which is why you're seeing him slotted into our sort of typical off-the-shelf Raven, Rebirth Raven, and Hawkgirl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are about 29 weeks since the end of the break in the cycle. It for a while was new character, old character, new character, old character, and it's been old characters for a while now. We expect next week to be Suicide Squad, Deadshot, based off of sort of going back to just the old character pattern.
Right.
Moving on to the multiplayer reward, it is Nightwing's Ninjato, which becomes the Brandished Ninjato. Its effects are retarget 90% of enemy AoE damage to the wielder of this item with 50% damage absorb, a 40% max health increase, a Nightwing specific ability to reflect 16% damage, and the evolved ability which gives you 300% of received AoE damage as power. It's last available on the 11th of April 2024. We expect next week's to be Riddler's Staff, another gear.
Right. It's taken me a long time, but I feel like I'm finally coming around to the value of the Ninjato. It's definitely defensive gear, and we generally don't lean into any kind of defensive abilities with the gears that we use. We go all offense all the time.
Yeah.
But, every once in a while we have a defensive tank on our team, and it's interesting sometimes to use it on Hawkgirl when we gear her as our tank, to take away any of the harm that comes from the opponent doing splash damage.
Yeah, it is kind of nice to get hit by a splash damage and just have it redirect your tank automatically, right? Because that is where you want the damage to go if you can help it.
Yeah, yeah. So Hawkgirl with Ninjato and Astro Harness can work very well, especially when you already have a primary and secondary damage dealer on your team. What makes it so good for defense is there's a really great synergy in all the different abilities, right? So 90% of splash damage gets pulled onto the character holding the Ninjato. So that means you're protecting your other characters. But 50% of that gets dissipated, meaning teammates only get hit with 10% of the original splash damage. And the holder gets 45% only of what would have been the splash damage. So half of that 90. In addition to the original splash damage, or the original special damage if they happen to be one standing in front of them, right? At the 40% boosted health means that there's a better chance of surviving the special and splash damage, right? That it's not going to cost you that much. And 300% of received splash damage becomes power. And the percentage of health you lose as a part of your health bar is tripled and given as a percentage of the power bar. So if you lose a third of your health, you get 100% power, which is pretty cool. Damage reflection is good, but 16% is not a lot in most cases, but it's enough because what it does is in multiplayer, it generates power for you. So here's a limitation of using it on your own team. The biggest potential splash damage cards are Luchador Bane and any of the Batgirls, and they so rarely get a chance to hit us that taking up an entire gear slot to generate the power for those specific situations where they actually get to launch a special, a lot of the time there are better options. But every once in a while, it's a nice kind of bonus to sort of not be affected by that.
Especially if it's somebody who you're not going to have in most of the time anyways. It's one of those nice effects that sort of works when they're just sitting in the reserves, which isn't that common.
Right. Definitely, clearly a defensive gear. It has greater value on a team if you're planning on leaving it for defense in multiplayer. So that's using it. The opposite, where you're facing it, it can be a problem if they have Brandished Ninjato, especially if you're relying on a significant amount of splash damage. So if you're doing splash damage, you have Tantu Totem, someone's coming in with lots of power because of the Ninjato after their teammate gets knocked out, and you get your power back from Tantu Totem, then it's a real race to do a special before they do a special as soon as they tag in. And if you get unlucky, you're, instead of being a special race where you actually have half a chance, it's going to be a race of your specials against their super, and it's almost impossible to win the race if they've got 3 bars. And as you can see in some earlier examples, maybe not this fight, but in our multiplayer fights against Killing Joke Joker, where we don't try to knock him out last, Enchantress, for that specific situation, it's nice to have Enchantress Companion gear, because it buys you time to knock out people that are tagging in with 3 bars of power. Because that's really the only thing you can do. And that's the biggest to me, that's the biggest danger where I'm surprised and somebody's coming in, oh my gosh, they're loaded. They're ready with a super. And I guess maybe for the sake of the brevity, if you want to hear the discussion, go back to the November 3rd, November something, 2023.
Yeah.
Because there's a really weird effect. If the person facing you is the Ninjato, and if it's Nightwing, and you've got Master's Death Card.
Well, no. So 11th of April 2024 is where the gear was.
Oh, right. Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm all messed up. Yeah. Okay, so April. Take a look at that recap because we talk about it more. That what happens is you do a special. If you don't knock them out, the person with Ninjato, you're getting your power back, but they get a bunch of power too because of the splash. Yeah. And then they get it immediately, and yours sort of creeps up really fast, and you feel like you've got a chance to use it again, even though you shouldn't have because you didn't knock them out.
Yeah.
It's the interplay between the Ninjato's ability and Master's Death Card ability.
It's interesting and it's fun. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on to the store, we have the Suicide Squad Deadshot bundle, $24.99 Canadian, all prices in Canadian, because that's the info we have access to.
And that is the only currency that matters.
Yep. And that is sort of our corroborating clue to what next week's challenge is going to be. It gives you 100,000 power credits and a copy of Suicide Squad Deadshot, but it does not unlock it in the store, so it's not worth it. You should just wait to next week and earn it the normal way. We have the Arkham Asylum Pack 1. It's $24.99, and it gives you, it's got Arkham Knight Batman on the cover, but you get Arkham Origins Batman, Arkham Origins Deathstroke, and Arkham Harley Quinn. And it says new, more powerful in the description, but that's sort of a reference to a change that happened so long ago that, buffed Harley Quinn. So the better pack is the Arkham pack, which gives you a chance at a bunch of different characters for the same price. In terms of other stuff that's in the store, character bundle Battle of Themyscira's in its second week, and everything else has been around for a while now.
Yeah. So Phantom Zone is finished. This is the second week that it's been finished.
So it should be back next week.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
562 still broken. Last weekend's breakthrough for gold was Killer Croc, Harley Quinn, and Martian Manhunter. So that means this coming weekend is probably Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, and Lobo. Link in the description to a thread of the Injustice Mobile subreddit from Devlin16 that goes over the complete breakthrough cycle.
Yeah. As far as current glitches go, we go into more detail every time something significant changes, which hasn't happened in a long time, or on the first Thursday of every month. Most recently, that was the 7th of November 2024. So all we'll say here is that the challenge reset glitch is tested and working on Kahndaq Black Adam. And even though Phantom Zone isn't around, just a reminder that resetting one resets both. So for next week, at least, only reset if you're willing to reset your progress on both at the same time. To finish up, we'd like to give a huge thank you to our patrons on Patreon.
That would be Michael Devries, Irvin, Ruiz, Hoshi127, and Nora Klimek, who are supporting us on the credited level.
So there we go. Thank you so much for your support. And thanks so much to all of you for watching or supporting us however you do. We'll see you next time.
Komoda.